I had a plan. It was a good plan according to my opinion at the time as well. This plan was so set in my head that I didn't even consider anything else. It was just obvious, at least up until it wasn't anymore and everything changed. Now, before I continue, I should probably introduce who I am. My name is Ryan Schwartz, and I am a student in the seminary here in the SOTCM. And that's all I'm going to tell you right now, because you're about to learn a lot about me in the next few minutes. So, when I was first asked to give my origin story here in this chapel, I was having a really hard time thinking about what that was going to be. Even though I just made it sound like there was one definitive moment that itself changed everything, it wasn't just this one moment in time. I've actually identified 3 different, I could say, strands of experiences in my life that actually led up to this event where everything actually did change for me. For this first one, I have to rewind back to about when I was in 2nd grade, maybe. I had an infatuation with taking technology apart and putting it back together, kind of like Legos, but, with just random technology lying around. There's one specific story that I'm not sure I actually remember due to a memory in my head or whether it was because my parents retold me so many times, but our family's VCR broke. Now, since my parents knew about this hobby of mine of taking things apart, they gave it to me, and they said that if I fixed it, they'd give me $20, and that if I didn't, it was already broken, couldn't make it any worse. So I doubted that I could actually fix this broken VCR. I mean, I was in 2nd grade. That wasn't going to happen. But I wasn't going to pass up this opportunity to be able to take one apart, so I accepted the offer. I remember having the pieces of this thing scattered across what I believe was my bedroom floor. Just, most of them were the mechanical pieces, the plastic pieces that make up the whole thing. And then it came to the motherboard that was at the center of this thing. And I loved these things. I couldn't really take anything else apart once I got there, but I loved looking at these circuit boards because they looked like these little cities with little buildings and roads connecting everything to each other. I just thought they were really cool. After that, I put the thing back together, which is just as fun, if not more fun, than taking it apart for me. Everything just fitting back into its place to make the one whole. Now, I must have done something right, because when we plugged that thing back in, it worked perfectly. And I don't know how long it worked after that, but at the time, it worked, and I had just earned myself a $20 bill. Now, this was just the start of this plan I had to become an engineer. Now, progressing through elementary, middle, and high school, I had always thought of math as one of my favorite subjects. Numbers just seemed to make way more sense to me than letters or words, honestly. They just seemed to work. Now, my obvious conclusion based on that pointed toward becoming an engineer. And so my teachers and my parents were very encouraging of this thought as well. So when it came to start thinking about colleges, which is, like 9th grade, right? Everyone thinks about college in 9th grade. No. It was an obvious thought to go to Purdue University, which is here in Indiana, and I grew up here. So this school is known for its engineering program, and I just knew this is where I'm going to go. So when I eventually graduated, I moved into my college dorm room on the 6th floor of Shreve Hall. Now, moving to college and being the introvert that I am, I went in having this mentality that making close friendships wasn't really worth the time or effort because, we're all going to leave in 4 years. So I didn't really try that hard. I made what I would call acquaintances, but overall, I was just kind of lonely while I was there. I didn't make any close friends. Not only that, but school started giving me a hard time as well. I enjoyed the topics of most of my classes, but I began to be haunted by thoughts of purpose in my life. Now, I did like these subjects, at least the ones having to do with engineering. I was really happy when I put that last English class behind me and didn't have to write any more papers. Look at me now. Anyways, I liked my engineering classes, but I felt an intense lack of purpose to the point where I really couldn't motivate myself to put in the work for these classes. And I experienced what I think of now were small anxiety attacks frequently, because I just didn't know what I was doing with my life. I'd gone along with this plan I had made from a very young age and didn't put much thought in it besides the idea that I liked wanting to be an engineer. That sounded like something I would want to do, and I could definitely live with an engineer salary. I persuaded myself that these feelings I was having of loneliness and anxiety were just a reaction to leaving home and going to school. Everyone experienced it, right? So I just had to push through it and keep moving on. Going back to my childhood, the second strand that I realized had an effect in where I ended up was church. So I grew up in the church my whole life. My parents were both good Christians and still are. There were very few Sundays in which my family was not at the church. I followed that pattern set by my siblings as well when they got involved in music in the church, and I actually involved myself as well. I was invited in and got involved in the music on Sunday mornings, as well as leadership roles in the youth ministry on Wednesday nights. Now, I can't pick out a specific point in time where it began, but I started having this feeling that I couldn't be who the people in my life wanted me to be. There was a specific portrayal of what a Christian was in my church that I just didn't think I could fit. Every lesson started to feel like I couldn't relate to it, and I was wondering what I was doing wrong because everyone else seemed to identify with these teachings, and I couldn't relate. Nothing on the people giving them. I still loved them, and I continue to love the people at that church, but I couldn't get with what was being said. I didn't relate at all. You know how those people sometimes say that they felt like a message spoke directly to them? That's what I felt I was lacking. I would go multiple Sundays and I wouldn't feel like it was speaking to me. It was speaking to other people and not me, and I was wondering, what am I doing wrong here? And it wasn't that I didn't feel welcomed or that I felt judged or anything. These people are really good people, and I loved them. I just didn't feel like I fit in with them authentically. Now, a theory I have about this now is that I realized I was losing connection with a lot of my feelings, my emotions. And everything I heard in that church seemed to be an appeal to those feelings that I did not feel. People's comments about what was being said was always about how this message had made them feel, not how interesting specific points were, whether something was problematic, as I think of stuff when I'm listening to sermons. I really wanted to learn new things through the church, but it seemed like a lot of others and the people speaking just wanted to feel the same things that they had felt when going to church. And this was the only church I ever knew, so I just assumed this was normal. I grew up here. This is what everyone does. This is the normal way. So I started acting like them. I tried to pretend that I was the same way when I really wasn't. I wished I could be, and I attempted to be, but it never felt like me. Now, this became exhausting very quickly, trying to fit into this mold. And I eventually became bored with the church. I still went every Sunday and Wednesday, but this was because I volunteered, and in my household, you had to have a good excuse if you weren't going to be going to church. So by the end of high school, I wasn't really sure I even believed in this so-called God, and I decided to do whatever I wanted. I started smoking with my friends before I was even 18, and I was doing all sorts of drugs in high school. Just because, why not? When I went to Purdue, I stopped going to church altogether because I didn't have that motivation of my parents telling me, you need to go. I didn't have them looking down on me. I could do whatever I wanted. So I just didn't feel motivated at all. And God just became like this topic in the back of my head that would, get brought up every once in a while, but just as that, this topic to be discussed and maybe not something to believe for me. It was a weird point in my life because I never really denied God, but I wouldn't affirm him either. Every once in a while, I would go to church with my girlfriend at the time, but that was not consistent at all. In any case, I didn't feel close to God, or close to many people, in fact, and loneliness added to this anxiety I had been feeling. Now, going into my sophomore year at Purdue, I had to choose an elective that did not relate to engineering. It had to be something else. So as I looked through this list of classes of potential electives, there was one that caught my eye. Now, it was a beginner's course for biblical Hebrew. Now, don't ask me why, but that was the class I ended up choosing as an elective. This class soon became one of my favorite classes that semester as well. And I was doing my Hebrew homework one day when something that is hard to explain happened. I just came to know that studying the Bible is what I was supposed to do. Nothing specific really, besides like a realization that I wasn't where I should be. It wasn't necessarily a feeling, like a feeling inside, but more of just a sense of certainty that I needed to leave. This wasn't the place for me. This wasn't where I was supposed to be, and this is what I should be doing. Not Hebrew specifically, but studying the Bible. I didn't really want to leave, though, but I just knew I had to. Of course, immediately after I started doubting what had just happened, and I just didn't believe that that was anything besides just crazy thoughts because of these feelings I was having. I was like, I'm just thinking things through. But I decided to talk to a few of the mentors in my life that I'd had before I'd gone to college. And after talking to them, I actually felt affirmed and planned to change my course of study. The last people to talk to were my parents. Now, my parents were always encouraging of the engineering plan because I was good at it and it would ensure a more financially stable future for me and my future wife and family. Now, I don't know if you know, but being a pastor usually comes with just a slight difference in pay, just very minimal, just slight difference. So I was nervous going into this Skype call with my parents because I expected them to just talk me down, to be like, you just need to think this through more, and you just need to push through. This was a common theme in my family. I was told I need to push through and persevere, and I don't think those are bad traits, but I was just scared of what was to come. And I had been mentally preparing myself for a long time. I was really nervous going into the Skype call because they didn't know what was going on. I was just like, hey, I need to talk to you guys. And what actually happened during that Skype call was unexpected, to me at least. My parents told me that they had been feeling called to get involved in the ministry more and encouraged me to pursue my calling. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not really that in touch with my feelings and usually suppress them almost automatically. And this caught me off guard so much that I actually started crying. And crying is very unusual for me, unless you get me laughing hard enough. Now, my dad is a crier too. And so it just turned into both of us tearing up over this video call and my mom sitting there wondering what's going on. But everything worked out well. They were very encouraging of me, and that really just inspired me. It was not what I expected at all. So I ended up applying here at Anderson University, and after getting accepted, the transition couldn't have gone smoother. And why AU, you may ask? It definitely didn't have anything to do with my girlfriend just being 30 minutes away rather than the 3-hour drive I had to make before. It definitely didn't have anything to do with that. No, but it was also the first school that I've taught of in the moment of doing this Hebrew homework. In that one moment, this school popped up in my head. Now, I had like one friend here, I think, and I saw like the recruiter at my high school, but I never even talked to them. This came up into my head. And I actually quit doing that homework and just researched everything about this school to see what it's all about. And after visiting, I had made my decision, and I believe it was a really good one to end up going here. So here we are, at the end of the story, right? Well, if you've been paying attention, you might be thinking, wait, you said you identified 3 things in your life, and that was only 2. Well, if you're thinking that, good for you guys. You've been paying attention. I definitely wouldn't have noticed. Just like I really didn't pay much attention to this 3rd strand of experiences that I had throughout my life and how much they contributed to me ending up being where I am today. It was something I took for granted until coming here and thinking more about my life. I did go to a small private Christian school in Auburn, Indiana, which is up north. There I had Christian-based classes, but you didn't really get into these full-fledged Bible classes until about sophomore year of high school. You started with Christian history that year, and the next year you took a systematic theology course, and then in the senior year you had a world religions class. I believe these classes had a large part to do with this journey that led me here. Even more than the classes were these discussions that were sparked because of the classes. I had a few friends that I would hang out with that were a year older than me, a grade above me. And they would be taking these classes before I did and bringing these topics and ideas to me, and we would discuss them. And, they were things I had never even heard of and never even thought of. Now, again, I grew up in the same church, aka One Perspective, my whole life, until this point in my schooling. Now, these questions or these discussions challenged what I believed, and I loved it. At that point in time, I was already bored with Christianity, as my church had portrayed it at least. So having my former teachings challenged and somewhat destroyed didn't really bother me. It was actually really exciting. Discussing these things with my friends became somewhat of a hobby of mine. It grew this interest I had in Bible and theology, but at the time, I still knew I was going to be an engineer. It was just obvious, like I said. So this interest was nothing more than something fun to discuss and debate with my friends. And once they graduated, that's when I began doing all those silly things I mentioned before. I just moved on to the next interests I had with the friends that I had in my own year. And you know the rest. But looking back to when I was choosing my elective at Purdue, I know that the discussions I had with my friends and that interest I had found in Bible and theology, those really helped me in deciding to choose that Hebrew course out of this list of electives that, why would I choose biblical Hebrew? So this interest was still there in my head, and I saw that, and it sparked. And this, in turn, led to this call to ministry that I had. And this, again, sounds like the end of the story. But here I am. The story continues. In the short time that I've been here at AU, I've already learned so much from my professors and my peers, which really just makes me realize that I know nothing. It's somewhat of a discouraging side effect, while also encouraging because, I'll never run out of things to learn. There's always more. My life is completely different than it was before. For example, I rarely feel anxious anymore, besides when I agree to, speak in chapel. One of the most life-changing lessons I've learned so far is that there really isn't just one specific way to be Christian. I grew up with this image of what a Christian ought to be. Because I didn't fit that mold, I doubted my faith constantly and decided to just give up. Why bother? I can't be that. I didn't realize that studying the Bible academically and discussing theology can be acts of worship, just like singing worship songs on Sunday morning. I had separated these two things into different realms. One was for school, one was for church. And of course, the church side was the Christian side in my head. I didn't know that they could actually go together. I related church with being Christian and school with just learning, just learning. Going through school here has helped me realize that my learning here can be used as an act of worship in itself and as a spiritual practice in which God can grow me. This might seem simple to some of you, but this changed my life after learning this here. I'm no longer wondering if I'm doing something wrong or that I must be a bad Christian because I don't feel like I fit into these certain contexts. I've found different avenues of worship that I find meaning in. In planning for today, I realized why I was having trouble thinking of my origin story. An origin story to me gives a connotation of a one-time event that makes you a specific person forever, in a sense. Like in the comics, people become these heroes with these set powers or without powers, but a specific hero nonetheless. The fact is that I'm still in this process of becoming. The story isn't over. It's still going. I'm still living my origin story, becoming more and more of who I was created to be. And I believe all of you are still living your own unique origin stories as well. And I'm honored to be a part of them today. There are many things that form us and keep forming us, just like I was mentioning in my story. We are not static beings. We're not supposed to be stuck in a situation. God wants us to grow and continue this process of becoming. So now Jess is going to lead us in one last song, and let's stand together in worship. Thank you all for coming and listening to my story so far, at least. I hope that it may help you in your own journey, and if not, that's okay. At least you're helping me with my speaking in front of crowds thing. I want to encourage all of you to keep going. It's tempting to want to get to a certain point and stop, but I believe God calls us to be formed and transformed through him. Keep going. Again, thank you for letting me be a part of your day. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Go in peace.